Yo, I'm back with another one of my older scenarios that I did in the past. It's going to be another remaster. This one in particular is the situation where Trunks becomes a Majin to defeat the androids. So I hope you guys enjoy it, and if you do, hit the like button and leave a comment for the algorithm. And I'm going to let you guys know the story starts off pretty standard, from the standard timeline, and then it breaks off to its own thing. So I hope you guys enjoy. Let's get to it. Story starts off on the battlefield that was now a wasteland, littered with craters and debris from the fierce battle that had just taken place. Gohan and Trunks had fought valiantly against the androids, but their efforts were in vain. Androids 17 and 18 were just too powerful. Their cold mechanical laughter echoed across the desolate landscape as they bombarded the ruined city with ki blasts, searching for Gohan. And despite his strength and determination, the half Saiyan was overwhelmed. And when the smoke cleared, Gohan was missing an arm and Trunks was battered and bruised and unconscious. The androids were satisfied with their victory and left the scene, leaving Gohan and Trunks to suffer in their injuries, not knowing if they were alive or not. Like normal, Gohan gives his last Senzu beam to Trunks, who regains his consciousness to find his mentor pale and bloodied and missing an arm. Despite his own injuries, Gohan had given Trunks the last Senzu beam, and Trunks couldn't wrap around his head why. Because in his eyes, Gohan was the last hope for humanity, and he was now incapacitated, and Trunks felt like he was dead weight, and he felt responsible for the things that had transpired. Back at Capsule Corporation, Bulma worked tirelessly to stabilize Gohan's condition. The medical bay was filled with the hum of machines and the faint beeping of a heart monitor. Gohan lay motionless, his body wrapped in bandages, his face serene but lifeless. Trunks sat by his side, his fists clenched so tightly that his nails dug into his own palms. The guilt was unbearable. He replayed the battle in his mind over and over, wondering if he could have done something differently. If he wasn't so weak, he could have protected Gohan. This was all his fault, Trunks muttered to himself. His voice was barely audible. If he were stronger, none of this would have happened. Bulma placed a comforting hand on her son's shoulder, but Trunks barely noticed. His mind was consumed with regret and burning desire for vengeance. He vowed to himself that he would become stronger no matter the cost, to ensure Gohan's sacrifice was not in vain. Trunks stood in the dimly lit medical bay, his eyes fixed on Gohan's unconscious form. The rhythmic beeping of the heart monitor was a constant reminder of how close his master had been to death. The guilt gnawed at him, but he pushed it down, burying it beneath a growing resolve. I won't let this happen again, he told himself in a whispered tone, his voice steady but filled with intensity. I will not let the androids take anyone else from me. Not Gohan, not my mom, not anyone. He clenched his fist till his palms bled, and he made a silent vow to himself. He would find a way to become stronger, no matter what it took. The androids had taken too much from him, and he refused to let them win. With one last glance at Gohan, Trunks turned and left the room, his mind already racing with plans on how to train and grow stronger. The barren wasteland stretched out endlessly, a desolate reminder of the world the androids had destroyed. Trunks stood alone, his body drenched in sweat as he practiced the techniques Gohan had taught him. Each movement was precise, each strike filled with purpose, but his mind was elsewhere. The memories of the android carnival massacre haunted him, the screams of innocent people, the laughter of the androids as they destroyed everything in their path, and the sight of Gohan falling to the ground, his arm missing from his body. Tears streamed down Trunks' face as he unleashed a powerful energy blast that vaporized the nearby boulder in an explosion of light, turning it to dust. And as the dust settled, a chilling presence washed over him. The air grew heavy, and the temperature seemed to drop. Trunks froze, his senses on high alert. He turned slowly, his eyes narrowing, as he saw a figure emerging from the shadows. The figure's aura was dark and menacing, a stark contrast to the light of Trunks' energy. The mysterious presence stopped a few feet away. Its piercing gaze looked onto Trunks. The young warrior wiped away his tears, his expression hardening as he prepared for whatever was to come next. Wiping away his tears, Trunks stood tall, his tears now replaced with a fierce determination. His aura flared to life, a brilliant blue light surrounding him as he faced the mysterious figure that was looking at him. The dark energy emanating from the stranger was overwhelming, but Trunks refused to back down. Who are you? He demanded, his voice steady despite fear gnawing at the edges of his mind. The figure smirked, its eyes glowing with an eerie light. That's not really important, the stranger replied, his voice dripping with malice. What is important is the power that I've come to offer you. Trunks' eyes narrowed as he took on a defensive stance, his energy crackling around him. I don't want or need your power. He shot back, his voice filled with defiance. I'll get stronger on my own. The figure chuckled, a low menacing sound that sent shivers down Trunks' spine. Yeah, well, how's that working out for you, he said, his dark aura intensifying. Trunks clenched his fist, his resolve hardening. Whatever this creature was, he wouldn't let it intimidate him. He had faced the androids several times and lived to tell the tale, and he wasn't about to let some mysterious figure stand in his way. Trunks' palms glowed with the fierce crackling energy as he prepared to unleash an attack on the mysterious figure. His body was tense, his mind racing with a mix of fear and determination. I don't know who you are, but I can tell you're bad news from that energy, Trunks shouted, his voice echoing across the barren landscape. The energy in his hands grew brighter, the air around him humming with power. But before he could release the blast, the demon-like figure simply raised his hands, his expression calm and almost amused. Stand down, boy, the figure said, his voice smooth but commanding. I have no interest in fighting you. Yet, I merely wish to show you something. Trunks hesitated, his energy still flickering in his palms. What are you talking about? He demanded, his eyes narrowing. The figure smirked, his dark aura pulsating. A demonstration of true power, he replied. The kind of power that could change your fate and the fate of your world. The demon closed his eyes and the air around him seemed to grow heavier, darker. Trunks felt a chill run down his spine as the figure's energy began to surge. Crackles of black lightning erupt from the demon's body, pacing through the air and grounding themselves in the earth. The ground beneath Trunks' feet trembled and the sky above him seemed to darken, as if the very world was reacting to the demon's power. Trunks' eyes widened in shock as he felt the sheer intensity of the energy surrounding him. It was unlike anything he had ever experienced, dark, overwhelming, and filled with malevolence. That made his skin crawl. This was otherworldly. Trunks thought in his mind, this guy's power. It's on a completely different level. Even Master Gohan at his strongest couldn't compare to this. For a brief moment, a flicker of hope sparked within him. If someone this strong existed, maybe he would actually be able to defeat the androids. The demon's lip curled into a smile, a sinister smile, as he observed the shock and fear etched across Trunks' face. Impressive, isn't it? The demon said, his voice dripping with satisfaction. And this is only a fraction of what my master Babidi can offer. He turned his back to Trunks, his dark aura still crackling with energy. If you truly desire power, boy, my master can grant it to you. But it will require you to embrace the hatred that is in your heart. Hatred for those machines who have destroyed your world. Trunks' mind raced as he processed the demon's words. The offer was tempting, but something about it felt wrong. Wait, Trunks called out, his hand outstretched as he took a step forward. The demon paused, glancing over his shoulder. I have questions, Trunks said, his voice firm despite the unease in his chest. Who are you and who is this Babidi? What do you want from me? The demon chuckled. A low, menacing sound. All in due time, boy, he replied. For now, know this. The path to power is before you. Whether you take it or not is your choice. And also, I want to let people know this before I continue, because I had a guy do this in the comments the first time I did this video. He said, why didn't Babidi just possess the androids? We have to remember the androids don't have energy you can sense. So as far as Babidi knows, these are just strong robots. So why would he want to turn them into his minions, right? He wouldn't think he could extract any energy from them because they don't have an energy signature. But anyway, so let's continue on. Dabura's crimson eyes gleamed as he studied Trunks' face. Noting the flicker of interest that crossed the young warrior's expression, the boy was clearly torn, but the seed of temptation had been planted. Dabura's smirk widened, revealing a sharp teeth as he leaned slightly closer to Trunks. You have potential, boy, Dabura said, his voice low and dripping with malice. My name is Dabura, the Demon King, and if you truly seek the power to destroy your enemies, seek out a ship marked with the insignia of the letter M. There you will find what you desire. Before Trunks could respond, Dabura's form began to shimmer, his body dissolving into a dark mist. Wait, Trunks shouted, lunging forward in a desperate attempt to stop him, but his hands grasped only empty air as Dabura vanished completely, leaving behind nothing but the faint scent of sulfur and the echo of his laughter. Trunks stood there, his chest heaving, his mind racing. A ship with an M, what does that even mean? Who is this Babidi he mentioned? The questions began to swirl within his mind, but there were no answers, only the lingering promise of power. Trunks stood frozen in the barren wasteland, the wind whipping around him as he tried to process what had just happened. His heart was pounding within his chest. In his mind was a whirlwind of emotions, fear, curiosity, and a dangerous glimmer of hope. Dabura, Babidi, a ship with an M. The words repeated in his head like a mantra. Part of him wanted to dismiss this encounter as some kind of trick, a ploy by a malevolent force to manipulate him. But another part of him couldn't ignore the raw power he had felt radiating from Dabura. It was unlike anything he had ever experienced, and the thought of wielding that kind of strength was intoxicating. If I could have that power, Trunks thought, his mind drifting to the androids and the destruction they had caused. If I could be strong enough to stop them, would it be worth it? The question lingered unanswered as Trunks wrestled with his conscience. Trunks shook his head as if trying to physically dispel the thoughts swirling in his mind. He took a deep breath, steadying himself, and then he launched himself into the air, his whitish aura flaring to life as he soared toward Capsule Corporation. The wind rushed past him, but it did little to clear his thoughts. The encounter with Dabura replayed in his mind like a broken record. The demon's dark aura, his chilling words, and the promise of power. He knew he should focus on his training and on finding a way to get stronger through his own efforts. But the temptation was there, gnawing at the edges of his mind. What if this was the only way? What if this was my chance to get rid of the androids for good? As Capsule Corporation came into view, Trunks pushed the thoughts aside, at least for now. He had to check on Gohan to make sure his mentor was still holding up. But deep down, he knew the encounter with Dabura had changed something within him. The seed of doubt and desire had been planted, and it was only a matter of time before it grew into something he could no longer ignore. The sky was painted in hues of orange and purple as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across Capsule Corporation. Trunks descended slowly, his shoes touching the ground with a soft thud. His heart felt heavy as he approached the entrance, his mind consumed with worry. He wondered if Gohan was awake, or if there had been any changes. He pushed the door open and stepped inside, the familiar hum of machinery and the sterile scent of medical bay equipment greeting him. As he made his way to Gohan's room, Trunks couldn't shake the image of his mentor lying broken and bandaged. He paused outside the door, taking a deep breath before entering. The sight that greeted him was the same as it had been for days. Gohan lay motionless in a coma, his body swathed in bandages, his face pale and peaceful. He approached the bed, his voice barely above a whisper. Gohan, I'm sorry, but I'll get stronger, I promise, no matter what it takes. The days blurred together, each one feeling longer and more agonizing than the last, and Trunks spends most of his time at Gohan's bedside, watching and waiting for any sign of improvement, but Gohan remained unconscious. His body still wrapped in layers of bandages, his breathing shallow but steady. Trunks couldn't help but feel saddened by this, considering the only person he ever talked to in his life was his mother and his mentor Gohan. Trunks reached over to Gohan's bandaged arm before pulling back. You taught me everything I know, he said softly, his voice trembling. You were always there for me, like a big brother, and even some aspects like a father to him. And now, when you need me the most, I couldn't protect you. He clenched his fists, his nails digging into his palms again as tears welled up in his eyes. The guilt and sorrow were overwhelming, but beneath it all, a simmering rage began to grow. The androids did this. They took everything from us, and I won't let them get away with it. Bulma stood in the doorway watching her son with a mixture of sadness and concern. She had seen the change in Trunks over the past few days, the way his sorrow was slowly being replaced with rage, burning anger. It scared her. She had seen that same anger in Vegeta, and it always led to destruction. Trunks, she said softly, stepping in the room. You need to rest. You can't keep blaming yourself for what happened. Trunks didn't respond at first, his gaze fixed on Gohan's still form. When he finally spoke, his voice was low and filled with barely restrained fury. I should have been stronger, Mom. If I had been, Gohan wouldn't be lying here like this. The androids wouldn't have won, and the world would be saved. Bulma sighed, placing a hand on her son's shoulder. I know you're angry, Trunks, but you can't let that anger consume you. Your father, he let this rage control him, and it only brought him his demise. Don't make the same mistake. Trunks turned to look at her, his eyes blazing with determination. I'm not like him, Mom. I won't let my anger destroy me, but I won't let these androids destroy us either. I'll do whatever it takes to stop them, no matter what. Bulma's heart ached as she saw the resolve in her son's eyes. She wanted to argue, to tell him that there had to be a better way of doing this, but she knew it would fall on deaf ears. Trunks had made up his mind with whatever he was planning, and there was no stopping him. All she could do was hope that he would find the strength to resist whatever darkness that was brewing within inside him. The days turned into weeks, and Trunks' sorrow began to harden into something far darker. The image of Gohan lying broken and bandaged, the memories of cities reduced to rubble, and the laughter of the androids as they destroyed everything in their path played on loop in his mind, each memory filled a fire burning within him, transforming his grief into unrelenting rage. Trunks sat alone in his room. The pain was nothing compared to the anger coursing through his veins. They took everything from me, he thought, his teeth grinding together. My world, my father, my future, and now Gohan. They won't stop until there's nothing left. His aura flickered faintly around him, a sign of the storm brewing within him. The androids had become more than just his enemies. They were a symbol of everything he had lost, and he vowed to make them pay. They were a symbol of everything evil in the world, as far as he was concerned, in his eyes. The lab was eerily quiet, save for the faint hum of machinery. Bulma was tinkering with a device, her back turned to Trunks, who stood in the corner of the room. Suddenly, the beakers and the shells began to rattle and the lights flickered. Bulma turned, her eyes widening as she saw her son Trunks' aura flaring uncontrollably. A dark, crackling energy that seemed to warp the air around him. His fists glowed with power and his eyes burned with intensity that sent a chill down her spine. Even though she couldn't sense energy, she could feel the presence of what was going on, and the machinery was going haywire. Trunks, Bulma said cautiously, taking a step forward toward him. What's wrong? Trunks didn't answer at first. His mind was consumed with images of the destruction the androids had caused. Smug faces, Gohan's broken body, the countless lives lost. The energy in his fist grew brighter, and the machines around him began to glitch and spark. They won't get away with it, he said, finally, his voice slow and filled with venom. Not this time. Before Bulma could even respond, Trunks turned and sprinted out the lab, his aura leaving a trail of crackling energy in his wake. Bulma stared after him, her heart sinking. She had seen that look in his eyes before. It was the same look that Vegeta had when he was consumed by his desire to fight the androids. Trunks, wait, she called, but it was too late. He was already gone. Trunks stood outside Capsule Corporation. The cool morning air did little to calm the storm raging within him. He reached for the sword strapped to his back, its weight familiar and comforting. It was more than just a weapon. It was a symbol of everything Gohan had taught him, a reminder of the bond they shared. He unsheathed it lightly, the blade gleaming in the morning air, in the morning sun, before securing it once more. With a deep breath, Trunks levitated into the air, his aura blue, flaring to life. He looked toward the horizon, his eyes narrowing as he focused on the direction of the plains where dabura had mentioned. The memory of the demon's word echoed in his mind. Seek out the ship marked with the M insignia. There you will find what you desire. Trunks clenched his fists, his resolve hardening. He didn't know what awaited him, but he was done waiting, done hoping for a miracle. If power was what it took to destroy the androids, then he would seize it, no matter the cost. With a burst of energy, he shot into the sky, leaving Capsule Corporation behind as he flew toward an uncertain future. The wind roared in Trunks' ears as he soared through the the morning sky, his bluish-white aura cutting through the morning air like a comet. His mind was a whirlwind of emotions, rage, determination, and faint, gnawing doubt that he quickly pushed aside. He kept replaying Dabura's words as he soared through the sky. Trunks clenched his fists and flew, his jaw tight. He didn't know what he was walking into, but he didn't care. The androids had taken pretty much everything from him, and if this was the only way to stop them, so be it. The plane stretched out below, barren and lifeless, a reflection of the world the androids had created. Trunks scanned the horizon, searched for any sign of the ship Dabura had mentioned. He wouldn't stop until he found it. As Trunks flew over a particularly desolate stretch of land, something caught his eye. There, nestled in the shadows of a rocky outcrop, was a massive white ship, buried within the ground. Its sleek, otherworldly design stood out starkly against the bleak landscape, and emblazoned on his side was an ominous M. Trunks' heart raced as he descended, his feet touching the ground with a soft thud. He stared up at the buried ship, his breath coming in short, sharp bursts. He saw the M insignia on it. This is where I obtained the power to destroy the androids, he said to himself. He took a deep breath, steeling himself for whatever lay ahead. Before Trunks could walk into the ship, a voice broke the silence. I knew you would come, dabura said, his tone dripping with satisfaction. Trunks turned to see the Demon King emerging from the shadows, his yellow eyes gleaming in the dim light. Dabura's smirk was as unsettling as ever, but there was something almost welcoming in his expression. You made the right choice, boy, dabura continued, gesturing toward the ship. Power awaits you within, but be warned, the path to strength is not for the faint of heart. He turned and began walking toward the ship, his dark cape billowing behind him. After a moment, he glanced over his shoulder, his eyes locking onto Trunks. Well, are you coming, or have you changed your mind? Trunks hesitated for only a moment before taking a step behind dabura. His heart pounded in his chest, but his resolve was unwavering. He had come this far, and there was no turning back now. As they approached the ship, a massive door slid open, revealing a dim-lit interior. Dabura stepped inside, motioning for Trunks to follow. Dabura chuckled softly as the boy clenched his sword, telling him, You won't need it here, at least not yet. As they walked deeper into the ship, Trunks couldn't shake the feeling that he was stepping into something far greater and far darker than he had imagined. But he pushed the thought aside, his mind focused on one thing: power. Trunks followed dabura deeper into the ship, his senses on high alert. The corridors were dimly lit, the walls lined with strange pulsating veins, as if the ship was somewhat lifelike, and it flowed with malevolent energy. And then a new figure stepped in his view. The creature was unlike anything Trunks had ever seen. A small being with wrinkled skin and glowing yellow eyes. And he said to himself, So this is the one, dabura. The creature sneered, circling Trunks like a predator, sizing up its prey. He doesn't look like much. Dabura crossed his arms, his expression unreadable. This soldier will explain the rules to you. The creature stopped in front of Trunks, his grin widening. If you want to prove your worth and gain the power you seek, you must pass a series of tests, he said, his voice dripping with mockery. Fail and you'll be discarded like the weakling you are. Succeed and you may just earn the right to stand before Babidi himself. Trunks narrowed his eyes, his resolve hardening. I didn't come here to fail, he said, his voice steady. Bring it on. The guard chuckled, stepping inside and gesturing to the large door that slid open with a hiss. Your first opponent awaits, he said. Good luck, you'll need it. And it's a battle of life and death. Trunks stepped into the next chamber, the door slamming shut behind him. The room was vast and empty, save for a single figure standing in the center. The creature was quite massive, his hulking frame covered in dark, leathery green skin, and he had glowing yellow eyes, and those eyes locked onto Trunks. And a low growl rumbled from his throat, and there was a M insignia on his midsection. My name is Yakon, and you will not survive this trial, human. Trunks could feel the killer intent radiating from Yakon, a palpable aura of malice that made the hairs of the back of his neck stand on end. He took a deep breath, steadying himself, and dropped into a battle stance. His hand instinctively went to the hilt of his sword, but he decided against drawing it for now. We'll see about that, Trunks said, his voice calm but filled with determination. Yakon roared, charging at Trunks with surprising speed for his size. Trunks braced himself, his muscles tensing as he prepared to meet the monster head-on. The battle was fierce, with Trunks and Yakon exchanging blow after blow. Trunks' fists and feet moved in a blur, each strike landing with precision and power, but no matter how many hits he landed, Yakon seemed pretty much unfazed. The monster's dark skin absorbed his energy without him knowing it, and his glowing eyes never wavered. Trunks leapt back, putting some distance between himself and his opponent. He could feel his energy draining faster than it should, and it didn't take long for him to realize why. Every time he unleashed a burst of energy, Yakon's mouth would open, and the monster's strength seemed to increase. He was absorbing my energy, Trunks realized, his eyes narrowing. That's why my attacks aren't working. He clenched his fists, his mind racing. If energy wasn't going to work, he would have to try something else. Yakon charged again, its massive fists with spikes on them, swinging wildly. Trunks dodged with ease, his movements fluid and precise. He needed to find a way to defeat Yakon without relying on his energy. So he was going to try something else, but how? As the battle raged on, Trunks began to formulate a plan. He would have to outsmart his opponent, using his wits as much as his strength. He would have to use his blade over his brawn. So he began to take the steps. Trunks assessed the situation, knew that he had the ability to absorb energy, so traditional attacks wouldn't work. So he put his energy output to 0. The room grew eerily quiet as Yakon paused, his glowing yellow eyes narrowing in confusion on why Trunks had stopped. The monster sniffed the air and searched for his prey, and then his eyes locked on to the still form of the teenager. With practiced ease, Trunks reached for the sword on his back, his fingers wrapping around the hilt. He closed his eyes, focusing on the sound of Yakon's heavy breathing and the faint shuffling of his feet. The slightest movement was all Trunks needed. In an instant, Trunks flash-stepped, his body becoming a blur as he appeared behind Yakon. The sword gleamed in the dim light as he swung with precision, slicing through Yakon's thick hide like butter. The monster roared in pain, but Trunks didn't stop there. He moved with lightning speed, his sword a whirlwind of deadly strikes. Within seconds, Yakon was reduced to pieces. His massive body collapsed to the heap on the floor. Trunks stood over the remains, his chest heaving as he sheathed his sword, knowing that the fight was over. The door to the next chamber then opens, revealing a small circular arena. Standing in the center was Pui Pui. The creature smirked, his glowing eyes filled with arrogance. "Impressive," Pui Pui said, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "But don't think for a second that you'll have it easy with me, Pui Pui." Trunks stepped into the room, his expression calm but focused. He glanced around, noting the lack of obstacles or hiding spots. This fight would be straightforward. No tricks, no gimmicks. He turned his attention back to Pui Pui, his hand resting on the hilt of his sword. Trunks said, his tone casual. "Do you absorb energy too?" Pui Pui crossed his arm, his smirk widening. "No, I..." Before Pui Pui could finish his sentence, Trunks raised his hand and shouted, "Solar flare!" A blinding flash of light erupted from his palm, filling the room with searing brightness. Pui Pui stumbled back, his hands flying to his eyes as he let out a cry of pain, screaming about his eyes. He shouted, temporarily blinded by the attack. Trunks didn't waste a second. He knew better than to give his opponent time to recover. While Pui Pui was disoriented, Trunks seized the opportunity to end the fight quickly. As Pui Pui struggled to regain his vision, Trunks charged up his energy, his hands glowing with brilliant, bright blue light. He didn't need to draw a sword for this. Pui Pui wasn't worth the effort. Instead, he focused all his power into a single, devastating attack. "Take this!" Trunks shouted, thrusting his hands forward. A massive blue energy wave erupted from his palms, surging towards Pui Pui with unstoppable force. The attack engulfed the alien creature, obliterating him in an instant. When the light faded, there was nothing left of Pui Pui, not even a trace. Trunks lowered his hands, his breathing steady as he surveyed the empty room. He didn't gloat or celebrate. He simply turned and walked toward the next door, his expression focused and determined. No wasted movements, no unnecessary risk, he thought. That's how you survive to obtain this power to change your world. And then the door closed. Deep within the ship, Bobbity watched the battles unfold through a magical orb, his beady eyes widening in surprise. This teenager was proven to be far more capable than he had expected. Yakon and Pui Pui had been killed with ease, their strengths rendered useless against Trunks. Cunning and skillful, Bobbity scratched his chin, a sly grin spreading across his face. "Well, well," he muttered, his voice tinged with amusement. "This boy is more impressive than I thought. Perhaps he truly is going to be my next good soldier." Beside him, Dabura stood with his arms crossed, a smirk playing on his lips. "I told you he had potential," the Demon King said, his yellow eyes gleaming with satisfaction. He's got strength. He's resourceful and a lot of potential, and he's brooding with rage. He's perfect for our plans. Bobbity chuckled in his grin, riding. Yes, yes, but let's see how he handles the true trial. See, true power comes within after all. Comes from within after all. A door opens on the ship, revealing Bobbity and Dabura, who congratulate Trunks on making it this far. He bowed his head with a serious expression, asking for his next opponent, so that he could obtain his promised power-up. The malicious pair only smiled at Trunks before telling him that his next trial would not involve a physical fight, but a mental one. And if he truly wanted power, he would have to harness it in the form of his hatred for his enemies. Trunks frowned, his fist clenched at his sides. Hatred? I already hate the androids. What more do you want from me? Bobbity's grin turned sinister. Oh, we want you to harness that hatred, to let it consume you. Only then will you become what you were meant to be. Bobbity raised his hand, his fingers glowing with a dark, malevolent energy. Let us begin, he said, his voice echoing unnaturally. The energy shot forward, enveloping in swirling vortexes of darkness and red lightning within Trunks. Trunks grasped, his body stiffening as the magic invaded his mind. Images began to flood his thoughts, memories of his mother, Bulma, her face filled with worry and love. He saw her working tirelessly in the lab, her hands stained with grease as she tried to rebuild the world. He saw her comforting him after a nightmare, her voice soft and reassuring. The warmth of those memories clashed with the cold, oppressive darkness of Bobbity's magic, which created a storm of conflicting emotions within him. Trunks thought within himself, I won't let him take these memories from me. The darkness in Trunks' mind shifted and a new image emerged. Gohan, his master and best friend, standing knee-deep in a river. Trunks saw himself as a child struggling to stay afloat as Gohan reached out to pull him to safety. You're stronger than you think, Trunks. Never forget that, Gohan said, his voice filled with encouragement. You just have to believe in yourself. The memory was vivid, the warmth of Gohan's presence a stark contrast to the cold, consuming hatred that Bobbity's magic was trying to instill. Trunks' heart ached as he remembered all the lessons Gohan had taught him, not just about fighting, but about courage, compassion, and hope. Trunks wasn't ready to give in to the darkness just yet in being comforted by these memories. But then the darkness within Trunks' mind grew stronger, twisting his thoughts and memories into something far more sinister. The warmth of Gohan's teaching and Bulma's love began to fade, replaced by a cold picture of Android 18 who was laughing as she blew away innocent people and telling Trunks that he was not strong enough and he never would be strong enough to defeat them. And Trunks began to bite his lip, his thoughts spiraling with even more rage. They don't deserve to live, he said. The darkness didn't stop there. Another vision assaulted Trunks' sight. This one was even more powerful than the last. He saw his mother, Bulma, lying lifeless on the ground, her eyes staring blankly at the sky. Beside her was Gohan, his body broken and bloodied, his face frozen in a look of quiet determination even in death. The sight was too much for him to bear. Trunks fell to his knees, his hand clutching his head as tears streamed down his face. No, no, this can't happen, he cried, his voice breaking. I won't let it. But the visions were relentless, each one more vivid and horrifying than the last. The pain and sorrow were overwhelming, but they were slowly being replaced with something else, something darker. As Trunks' tears fell, a faint glowing symbol began to appear on his forehead. It was small at first, barely noticeable, but it was starting to grow brighter every passing moment. The Majin influence was beginning to take hold. His dark energy was about to chain his soul. The tears on Trunks' face began to dry as the sorrow in his heart was replaced by a strange, intoxicating warmth. It started as a faint sensation like a flicker of flame and darkness, but it quickly grew into an all-consuming fire. The pain, the guilt, the fear was being melted away, replaced by a sense of power that he had never experienced before. A small grin appeared on Trunks' face that was both triumphant and unsettling. The dark energy was coursing through his veins, and the Majin symbol was glowing brighter. This is what I need. This is what I need to exact my vengeance. As the visions kept going, the darkness within Trunks' mind shifted to sinister images. Images of him standing over Android 18 who was begging for mercy, and Trunks ignored her and blasted her away while laughing maniacally. And then the vision jumps to Android 17, who was on his knees asking Trunks for mercy. And Trunks replied to him in this vision, saying that he should ask for mercy in hell, and then he sent him to oblivion. And then his vision fades. As Trunks laughed, his vision faded, leaving Trunks standing in a dimly lit chamber, his body trembling with sheer intensity of energy coursing through him. The darkness had finally taken root, its tendrils wrapping around his heart and soul. The sorrow, the guilt, the fear was all gone, replaced by a lust for revenge and hatred. Trunks looked down at his hands, his fingers flexing as he felt the raw power surging within him. A smirk spread across his face, one that was both triumphant and unsettling. This is what I've been missing. This is going to put an end to the nightmare of the earth. The smirk on his face grew wider, and he clenched his fists and began to laugh even more. He had become something powerful and truly dangerous. Dabura chuckled at the sight of his new colleague as Trunks took hold of his newfound station. He said, "With this power, my vision will be reality. Death to the androids." Bobbity laughed maniacally. On this day, Majin Trunks is born. He was no longer the hopeful, determined young warrior who had entered the ship. He was now a rabbit hunter for machines. Alright, hope you guys liked it. If you did, be sure to leave a like, comment for the algorithm. On to the next one. Peace.